Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. In this video we are going to talk about the brand new anime Onimusha. Now I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce any of the actors that did the voices of any of the characters just because I don't want to insult the people in real life, so I'm just not even going to attempt to pronounce those names. However, Onimusha holds a very dear spot to me. I was someone who played the original Onimusha video games. In fact, Onimusha was actually a really big step towards me, or for me, towards going into this sort of whole world of anime. It also really was one of the first big steps for me to take into sort of just diving into cinema as a whole, to want to be watching all types of movies and want to be reviewing movies because I played, like I said, I played the original Onimusha games when they came out back when PlayStation 2 was brand new, back in the late 90s and early 2000s and all that good stuff. And Onimusha was one of my favorite games, and in fact, I actually, back in those days, we used to have what was called VCR with VHS cassette tapes, and I used to actually record myself playing all through Onimusha 1, 2, and Onimusha 3, I believe it was. Onimusha 3 was, I think that was the one that took place like over in Europe and over in France and all that cool stuff, and I used to record it, and then I used to watch it, and then I used to just watch it and sort of make it seem like I was watching like this 3-part Onimusha series, and it used to actually take me 2 VHSs because it was, the files and the gameplay walk-along was too big to fit on 1 VHS, not like today's age. Today's age we have, junk drives and all that stuff. You can easily do a walkthrough in today's age with today's technology, but back in those days we only had the VHS, and I actually used to record myself playing through all the Onimusha games, and I used to watch it. I used to actually literally spend, the full however long it used to take to watch. I would just watch those VHS over and over and over, and from my perspective, that was my only way, of being able to make my own anime type thing. And so I was very excited going into Onimusha, especially with knowing that Netflix did it, because Netflix is currently doing, or has already released, Blue Eye Samurai, which is probably one of my favorite all-time animes, not just modern day animes, but one of my full-time or all-time favorite animes in general. And so I had a lot of hope going into Onimusha just because I loved the video games and I loved anime and all that good stuff, and plus Netflix was doing it. But I will say I was a little bit disappointed with it. I didn't necessarily hate the series. I don't mean that like I didn't. It's not that I didn't like the series, I just thought it could have been done a lot better. So the series ends up taking the perspective of what I think was the second video game, basically, which was when the character actually uses the Ani gauntlet. Now, in the very first video game, the character himself actually obtained the, he actually was an Ani, and he actually had the power of the Ani, and he had sort of like this symbol, sort of like, embedded into his hand. So the person himself, the character himself, was sort of the gauntlet. Whereas then with Onimusha 2 and 3, they introduced this idea of the gauntlet where people could obtain the power of an Ani through the gauntlet without technically actually being an Ani. And that's basically the direction that this series took, is that the main character, Musashi, ends up having access to the power of the Ani through this gauntlet. Now, I was never a big fan of those parts of Onimusha. I always liked it when Onimusha and the character that was wielding the Ani power was someone who actually had the ability to do it. So more of like a superhero, as opposed to someone who had access to a certain form of technology or a certain form of gauntlet. In the original Onimusha game, it was more organic, and I kind of wish that this series had stuck with that and sort of had the more organic way of using power. So that was a little bit of a letdown to me. And also another thing that was a little bit of a letdown to me was that he never really truly indulged this power. It never truly became an Onimusha until the very last episode, in episode 8, which was titled Yang Soul. And I felt, and even then it only lasted very short. Now I know that in the video games there oftentimes was a time limit as well. You couldn't just stay an Onimusha. You would have to sort of absorb a bunch of souls of these demon type creatures, and then you could just keep sort of becoming Onimusha, and then it runs out, and then over time you become Onimusha again. So there was a limit to the power, but I just felt like if you're going to turn this into a TV series or an anime, you should allow the character to still be limited by it, maybe to some degree, in the sense of maybe you become Onimusha and then when it's over you become very winded. Maybe this forces you to have to go to sleep. Maybe you have no energy left. Like, sure, it could take a toll, but actually having it timed and having it so that he's hardly even an Onimusha to begin with, I thought that was a very bad choice. And I also really wished that he was Onimusha for more than one single episode. So the first episode was titled Demon. This is when we're introduced to a whole bunch of characters. And this is when they introduce the Ani Gauntlet, and they give it to Musashi, and he's basically has to use this basically to sort of go on this mission, but he has to agree to take the Ani back. Now, the second episode was called Mountain Demon, and in this episode, the gang ends up arriving to a village, and of course, they have a little bit of a scrimmage and whatnot. Really cool action. I like the action in episode 2. I really enjoyed the second episode, actually, and then I think they end up finding the character there as well, the little girl, and she's left her all on her own, and you'll eventually learn that basically, her village was attacked, and so that's why she's sort of abandoned and whatnot. And then, of course, as the story goes on, you learn that, Musashi ends up basically being reintroduced to a whole bunch of characters that he's already met from the past, but now they are these demon-possessed type characters, and they have this power from what they call, I think they call it the Gemni, or the Gemna, or the Gemna, which is basically like the demon power of the bad guys. So the good guy has the power of the Ani, and the bad guys have the power of the Genma, I believe is what they call them. And so, for the most part, I did really enjoy the action. I loved the animation. I thought the animation style was done really good, and all that stuff. I just feel like it lacked a lot of action, even though there were episodes that had action. I felt like the action was far and few and in between, and in those big gaps between the action, I felt like I never really connected with any of the real characters, especially Musashi. That's one thing that the video games really did well, was that you really connect with the characters. At least in the first two. I wasn't a huge fan of Onimusha 3, that video game, but I loved the first two, and I think the first game really did the best with really connecting with the character. So for me, in here, I really felt like there really wasn't any motives and nothing really relatable about the characters that really made me care. And a lot of the main characters do end up getting killed in this show, and I felt like because the development was done so poorly that you never really care. And sure, there are some moments that are a little bit emotional, especially with the little girl that they end up finding, but it was never a big enough impact where I was, wanting to cry or anything like that. So I felt like the development was done very poorly, and the storytelling was okay at best. Like I said, the fight scenes were really good when they actually took place. The animation looked flawless. I really loved the animation style and all that good stuff. And I really loved, Musashi when he becomes Onimusha in the last episode. I just feel like they really held back, and they really needed to have him be Onimusha, like at least for 2 or 3 episodes, and they really needed to let him soar and let him fly and let his power just, go crazy and all that good stuff. But like I said, I really feel like the power was very underutilized, and I really felt like the character development was just not there enough. So for me, I would give this movie this series probably a 55 or 60%. I did like it more than when I didn't like it, but I was very let down, and I thought that it was it just wasn't what I was expecting. I really expected to like the characters more. I really expected there to be a lot more action, and I really expected the power of Onimusha to really just, be in this movie or in this series a lot more than what it was. But anyways, folks, that's my review for Onimusha. So let me know in the comment section below if you've seen it, and if you like to tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button, and if you want to help us grow, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. And that's pretty well all I got. So until the next video, take care.